Probably begin with a question I was asked 5 minutes ago, and I get this question a fair bit. With a last name like Ehrenwerth, the question soon follows, where are you from and why are you in Louisiana? And so I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the reason I'm in Louisiana is because of the important work that we do here and that I'll talk about, but also has something to do with the fact that I married a girl from Opelousas, Louisiana, and as I was informed, when you marry a girl from Opelousas, you will remain in South Louisiana for the rest of your life, which is very good news for me. But I do really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the Water Institute of the Gulf. I have been on board since the end of January. And as you heard in this introduction, I've actually been working in the Gulf really since the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. I'm a lawyer by training, and when the spill happened, I was an attorney at the U.S. Department of Commerce, where my primary portfolio was to work on issues related to the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. So when the spill happened, got very involved in those immediate response issues, got involved in a number of legal issues in the immediate aftermath, and spent time in the White House counsel's office working on the Deepwater Horizon litigation in partnership with the Justice Department. And then the Restore Act was passed in 2012. And this presentation is not about that, but that was really the last 4 or so years of my life of working and to set up really one of the newest federal agencies in the government in Louisiana. So the Restore Council, Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Council for not short for long, is based in Louisiana, and that's where I had been. So it's a real honor to join the Water Institute, and I'll go through some slides. This first one tells you what I propose to cover, tell you a little bit about the Institute, who we are, what it is we do, a little bit about our projects and partnerships, and then offer a few words about what we think the future holds for the Institute. So really beginning with what we are, and I won't repeat what's on the slide and what's already been said, but it's important to say that we are an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit applied research institute. And sometimes people say, well, what does that mean? Are you a university? Are you a nonprofit? And we're certainly a nonprofit. We're not looking to make money for our stockholders. And we're not a traditional university. We're not in this work simply for publications and furtherance of a knowledge base. We do all of that, but we're really an applied research group. We are in the business of finding difficult problems that require science and doing that science to inform policymakers and help people make the best decisions possible. So it's really a remarkable place to be, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I think is so exciting about the Institute. It has to do with our integrated interdisciplinary approach, but I'll come back to that in a minute or two. So a few words on what we do. I've mentioned applied research, and you see a couple of our scientists on that slide who are actually out in the field doing it. But as you can see, you know, we're doing field investigations. We're monitoring. We're looking at models and doing modeling. That's actually some of the work that we are perhaps best known for. And I should have said at the beginning, and I'll give you a sentence or two on it right now. There's an entity in the Netherlands called Deltaris, which really has been doing tremendously important and sophisticated cutting-edge scientific work for many, many years. We're built on that model, but we're not just built on a Dutch model. In Louisiana, the Water Institute, we're only 5 years old. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on the shoulders of great scientific giants, people like Chris D'Elia at LSU and Robert Twilley and so many others who have been working in this field for so long. And because of that knowledge base, we're now in a position to really do some very important applied research. So this is an example of some of what we do in the applied research arena. We also work in technical support. And by that, I mean really what it says up here. Bringing together people for expert opinion. We had an expert panel on diversions that the Water Institute coordinated, which of course led into some of the work in the 2017 master plan. And so that's one of the other core areas of our expertise and our practice. I don't need to, I think, dwell on the challenge that we have in coastal Louisiana. If you're here today or you're tuning in, you understand our challenge. We have an existential land loss crisis. And there are lots of figures, and I have two on the screen here. Almost 1,900 square miles lost since the 1930s, and we're currently losing over 16 square miles a day. This is an unsustainable situation that the state of Louisiana, through its master plan, is attempting to resolve in the most scientifically responsible fashion possible. But that's the problem statement. We know the core set of issues that we're looking to tackle. And what we at the Institute do to try to be helpful in this set of discussions is to put together an integrated approach. The notion that you can take a complex challenge like the land loss crisis that we have in Louisiana and solve it with any one discipline, I think is a myth. You need an integrated and interdisciplinary approach to solving a challenge like this. So the way we tend to think about these things is you put what's on the slide here, a circle, and if you can't see it in the back because the print's a little small, I'll just briefly note these different steps in the circle. Physical processes and sediment systems. You need to understand how much sediment is in the Mississippi River. How does it work? The human dimension. That's something that is critically important to this discussion. It's not simply about the birds and the critters that live and take advantage of these ecosystem resources that we have. It's also the people. The state refers to the multiple lines of defense strategy. You know, what will certain projects do for communities along the coast, and how do you best and most thoughtfully manage the set of processes in place right now? Engineering, design, and innovation. That's, of course, core to getting smart projects done and turning dirt. Coastal systems, policy research, and the modeling and monitoring. These are all different disciplines that in the Institute we bring together under one roof. And you know, here's another wheel. You can see that we tend to think of these things as in a holistic fashion when you see multiple circles coming up on these slides. But for us, in the middle of it is research, innovation, and data. Those are sort of those three cores inside that circle. And then there's planning, and there's engineering, design, monitoring, and adaptive management, which is a concept that I will come back to because it is just so important. You know, when you start in on one of these projects, you come in with your best ideas and your best theories, and you must adaptively manage projects like major sediment diversions. Because what you know in advance, you will get better knowledge as you move forward with the project. So for us, we're very excited about that discipline generally. Let me tell you now a little bit about what we've been doing in Louisiana and beyond, because we are working in actually a number of other countries. So we have been out. You can see some great pictures up here of some of the work we've been doing in the field. We really have our bread and butter over the last 5 years has been to support the CPRA in the state of Louisiana in the development of the 2012 and now 2017 master plan. So much of our efforts have really been geared towards supporting our partners at the state. And by the way, I must say, you know, we are just so proud to see the movement and the support that the master plan has received as it's been making its way through the 2017 approval process. You know, in Louisiana, we are not always considered at the top of the list nationally and on various metrics. Sometimes, unfortunately, we find ourselves towards the bottom of the list. But when it comes to a science-based master plan, we are, without question, #1 in the United States of America. And we're at the furthest end, and really in some of the coastal planning around the world, because it has been based on the best available science, because it has been put together in a thoughtful and collaborative framework. So I think we should all be even prouder than we are of this master plan, and we're encouraged to see it approved in short order. A few things that we've been up to that I wanted to highlight. So I mentioned the human dimension. The Social Vulnerability Index. This is one of the attachments to the master plan. This is something that we are very interested in and are very proud of that the Institute has developed. So this work has been led by Scott Hemmerling, and who leads our Human Dimensions team at the Institute. And it really involves looking at the very intuitive kind of questions that you would imagine. You know, we have become known nationally in Louisiana for what's happening with the eel to John Charles. And that's one example where you see a population that is at the tip of the spear when it comes to issues of sea level rise and subsidence. And what does one do? So the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has made funds available to the Office of Community Development, and there's going to be a major effort underway to ensure that that what the New York Times referred to as a set of climate change refugees, I defer as whether people like that term or not, but you get the point that there's a problem, a real life problem that needs to be addressed. In any case, the Social Vulnerability Index is one tool that we think is promising to help inform how to make some difficult policy decisions. I've mentioned adaptive management and promised I'd come back to it, so that's again something that we think is just critical to being successful. You get these projects underway, and I'll use diversions as an example of where adaptive management is so critical to success. So as you can see from this slide, the notion of controlled diversions, of using the Mississippi River, really harnessing that ecological asset and commercial asset that is so much the lifeblood of this area. This is not a new concept. You can see from some of these pictures that this notion has been around for some time. And I've now put up a drawing of what we imagine one of the newer diversions that the state hopes to see move forward soon, what it might look like. I mentioned this under the guise of adaptive management for a couple reasons. First of all, the sediment diversion program from the master plan that the state is moving forward with is just such an important part of that plan. And there's never been anything attempted along the scale of, for example, the MID-BARATARIA sediment diversion that's under consideration. It will be the first of its kind at that scale, at that magnitude, ever tried on planet Earth. So we think we know a lot about it. We've done some really good modeling, and I'll show you a little bit. But there's no question that if and when these projects get underway, you must adaptively manage them, because you will learn some things through the operation of a diversion structure. So let me actually talk a little bit about the MID-BARATARIA diversion. It's a very important project. This slide orients you on a roundabout where it's contemplated. And it's, I'll put this up, and if you can see it, this is really our model of watching if that diversion were to be done. And I'll take it backwards again and show you one more time, because it actually shows, I think, a very compelling animation of if the diversion is operated for 10 years, how will it actually create land? And it's a pretty compelling picture. Our science and our modeling shows that diversions will be successful at creating land. There are a whole set of policy questions around the diversion program. There are some people who are very much in favor of it, other people who have concerns. Our job at the Water Institute is not necessarily to answer all those questions. Our job at the Water Institute is to provide the best science so that informed decisions can be made. And I do want to be very clear. Our science shows that there are some reasons to be very excited about the diversion program and about the MID-BARATARIA diversion in particular. So for the sake of time, I won't rewind the animation here, but I can be happy to show it again if there's interest in it when we turn to questions. A word on efficiency and sustainability. So some people have said, well, is it a good idea to actually move forward with the diversion project? Could you not simply dredge and pipe additional sediment to create land? And as I said, the Water Institute, we don't do policy questions of that nature, but what we can do is we can do some analysis. And what this slide shows is that if you had MID-BARATARIA on, based on our projections, that we estimate that it would carry around about 43 million metric tons of sediment during its first 10 years. To give some perspective, that would take more than 1,950 dump trucks, which is a lot of dump trucks. So some people say, well, why consider the diversion program? Why consider that as a tool in the toolbox? And I think one of the compelling reasons to consider it is because of the efficiency and sustainability. If you invest in a project like this, which is not a cheap project, but you invest in it, you then get to harness the power of nature, and you get to have that structure to be used over time, whereas some of the other models, some of the other things like dredging and piping, which, by the way, have a very important and critical role in saving our coast. But it's hard for any tool to be as powerful and as sustainable as the Mississippi River. So in any case, again, we leave the real decisions up to the policymakers and decision makers, but our science and our engineering thinking show that there really is something there. And finally, I'll conclude this part of the talk with again, the adaptive management wheel. We love these wheels. And basically you're looking at the problem, you design something, you implement it, you monitor it, and then you're constantly evaluating it, and then this is the important part. Then you make adjustments. Whatever we do, surely we will need to make adjustments with a project of this magnitude, make adjustments over time. And it's not just humility that causes one to adaptively manage, it's just smart science. You have a theory, you test it, you make adjustments. So that's really, I think, at the core of the adaptive management theory. A couple other project examples. We do a lot of synthesis at the Water Institute, taking a number of different data sets, a number of different disciplines, and trying to bring them together under one framework to try to get some powerful insights from that kind of synthesis work. And here you can see a few examples. I won't go into all the detail, but we've looked at historical changes in infrastructure, density, ecosystem, community well-being to inform future planning. We've looked at basin-wide monitoring. We've looked at community resilience. These are products that we think are very compelling and important to decision makers. And when you do that work, you can get the bigger picture. That's our argument. So you look at a map in the 1960s and then a map from 2010 of combined oil and gas related infrastructure density in this same area, and that tells you something. That tells you something about where you've got critical infrastructure that is vulnerable, that requires protection. And by the way, we think that there are some very compelling ways to work with nature to protect critical infrastructure, which I'd be happy to talk about if there's some interest. The Coastal Atlas. So this is another product we're very proud of. Scott Hemmerling, again, head of our Human Dimensions program, recently had this book published by LSU Press. I won't go into all the details on it, but if you're interested in this set of issues, it's worth checking out because it really does, I think, a great job of charting issues and having some wonderfully helpful maps, informative maps over a period of decades. As I mentioned, we are not just working in Louisiana, and this is an area that we're very excited to talk about and to continue to explore. So we certainly like to tell ourselves in Louisiana that we are special, and God help us, especially around Mardi Gras, we are very special, but we are not unique. Our issues are not unique. And so what we have done in this delta, in the Mississippi River Delta, is we have done some science, done some thinking and some analysis that's really not been done in any other part of the world. But there are other parts of the world who have the same ecological stressors that we face here. So this slide is highlighting some of the work that we're doing in the South Pacific. We have an MOU in place with the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environmental Program, and actually, as is pictured here, the head of our Coastal Ecology Department just came back from Fiji, where he has been doing some work. And again, taking what we have learned here, this interdisciplinary integrated model, and applying it to challenges that are being faced in the South Pacific. Similar story in the Mekong River Delta. This is an area where our team has been engaged for some time. In fact, one of our lead scientists came back not too long ago and made the observation. He said, you go to the Mekong and it almost looks like our delta 50 years ago, because they're just starting to put some dams in place and just starting to see some of the same stressors that we have been experiencing here for some time. So it's really, and I'll go through one more example. We're doing some work in coastal Chile right now with the Rockefeller Center at Harvard University. And the point of all of this is not so much to show off the international work that we're doing. The point is really to highlight that in Louisiana, in particular with all of our partners, and in particular with the great science that has been done in the Netherlands and has been done here in Baton Rouge and all over the state, we are able to apply these insights to areas all over the world. And I've highlighted just a couple, but that doesn't mean that that's the end of it. We really think that this is an opportunity to export our science, export our engineering and our wherewithal. And that's not something that the Water Institute would do alone. To the extent that we have opportunities to work internationally, we'd love to go over there and do some science. But at a certain point, we don't do construction and engineering and design. That's not our area. We'd like to hope that good Louisiana businesses and other businesses from the Gulf of Mexico have the opportunity to go into those areas because they've developed the expertise and know how to do it. So we're very interested to continue to do this and see where things go. And I'll start to wrap things up. We tend to refer to this as the new Louisiana purchase. How is it that we can take what we have learned here, the fact that we are investing so much in saving our way of life and saving our coast, how can we do that, save our coast, while at the same time exporting that knowledge to other areas, other parts of the country, other parts of the world that need that assistance and help. As I said, we don't do this alone. There's very little in the scientific world, and certainly in a problem of this magnitude, that anybody does alone. And I highlight here on this slide some of our partners. You can see this is government, federal government, state government. You've got private sector, you've got nonprofit, and there are many, many others that I could highlight here. But it's our hope to continue to do that, to continue to partner, to continue to try to forge new alliances because of what it says on this slide, which is that we are better together. And I like to end with this picture and image because this is a group of Water Institute staff in our new building, which is under construction right now on the water campus. And for us, we're thrilled to move to the water campus. We're thrilled to ultimately move into this building. If you haven't seen it, it's really coming along very nicely on the river. You can get a great view of it from the I-10 bridge. It's built on and around really the 1926 old dock, and is going to provide not only an opportunity for us to do what we do science and modeling and analysis, but an opportunity for us to convene with colleagues in Louisiana, colleagues from around the country, around the world. And I must credit the vision of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation in putting this campus into place and for helping us to take a role in it. So that's us, a few of us standing on at the site the day of the topping off ceremony. And I think really an appropriate way to conclude and to take your questions, because I do think that while our challenges are monumental, they are the kind of challenges that if we come together as various stakeholders, whether it's academics, scientists, practitioners, nonprofits, government, private sector, we really can do something to address our challenges. And if we don't, and we're fragmented and we're competing with one another, then we compound our challenges. So our main message and our primary ask to all of our partners and all of our stakeholders is to help us. Help us figure out how to bring everybody together. We do the science and the modeling. We can't solve the problem alone. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you today, and look forward to your questions.